Qatari jets will soon be flying and practicing out in Idaho's skies, all part of a partnership against Iran. But is that a good thing? We'll get into that. Also, last week Nampa gave the Ford Idaho Center to CWI. The Idaho Legislature wades into defending Idaho's school choice tax credit, and Idaho sets fires to fight fires. This is the Yokel Idaho Midweek Report. We're giving you an overview of the news you need to know in Idaho for the last week. Glad to have you here with us again. Plus, do you remember the firefighter who survived an ambush earlier this year? We'll get into that and Caldwell's second round at parking restrictions, which, as we know, everyone is so happy about. To get full coverage on these important stories and much more, go to our website. We cover far more there than we can here. And to be the most informed Idahoan in the room, hit that subscribe button so you don't miss any of our future content. Let's jump into the episode. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth, a not controversial person at all, announced that last Friday, Qatar's Air Force will build a hangar at Mountain Home Air Force Base to train F-15 pilots. Qatar will pay for the construction through a foreign military sales agreement. The facility will host Qatari F-15s and pilots to train alongside our crews. As you can guess, as we gave in the intro, this announcement has split our state's political leadership. Congressman Mike Simpson called it, quote, a fantastic news, end quote, that strengthens our national security. Representative Jaron Crane praised the Pentagon's work. However, Representative Heather Scott questioned why we're allowing a foreign Islamic country to have bases here in Idaho. Senator Brian Lenny called it, quote, America last, end quote, questioning why we're letting a nation smaller than Wichita, Kansas, set up a military installation here. In conclusion, however, Representative Ted Hill, who flies as a contract fighter pilot, explained or added greater detail that Qatar will build or refurbish a hangar, but the base will own the buildings. He says this lets us train against Qatar's F-15s without paying for it, and Qatar becomes a coalition partner against Iran. Also, Singapore has trained at Mountain Home Air Force Base since 2008, so they're not the only foreign nation out there on the base. After months of heated debate that divided Idahoans, the Nampa City Council voted 4-2 last Monday night to transfer the Ford Idaho Center to the College of Western Idaho, or CWI. This marks a turning point for the 20-year-old venue that has cost the city nearly $1.9 million annually in subsidies. CWI will not pay cash for the property, however. Instead, the college will take on the center's revenues, losses, and an estimated $25 million in deferred maintenance. The college promises no increases to student tuition or property taxes, planning primarily to fund all of this through upgrades, through private donations, grants, and scholarships. We'll see how that goes because they have been lobbying the Idaho Legislature for more money. Brian Lenny pointed that out earlier this week when this happened. For CWI, this means gaining 100 acres that connects its main campus to the Micron Education Center, something we've reported on in the past when they completed that, plus the 12,000 seating arena, outdoor amphitheater, and Idaho Horse Park. President Gordon Jones called it, quote, a once-in-a-long-time, if not a lifetime opportunity, end quote, to expand the programs in agriculture, event management, and workforce development, not only adding quite a feather in their cap. However, the transfer isn't final yet. The council must approve the final terms there in Nampa, and then CW's Board of Trustees must vote to accept, likely later this month. Hey there, one second. If you've gotten to this point in the episode and you seem to really enjoy what's going on in Idaho and learning more about it, consider subscribing or following us, depending on the platform you're on, so you don't miss any of our future Idaho content and you can be way more informed than your neighbor. And diving more into politics, our legislature just jumped into the court battle over House Bill 93. For those not following it, this allows families to claim tax credits for private education expenses, so private school or homeschooling. Speaker Mike Moyle and Senate Pro Temp Kelly Anton hired attorneys from Givens Pursley to defend the law, alongside Attorney General Raul Labrador's office. The Supreme Court granted the legislature's request to intervene on October 3rd, though they denied a similar motion from a national school choice groups representing Idaho families who plan to use the credit. And then for some context, Moyle told Idaho Ed News that legislative leaders want to, quote, ensure all information gets out there, end quote, noting that the Attorney General's office sometimes, quote, misses stuff, end quote. The lawsuit filed September 17th by a coalition including the Idaho Education Association and Moscow School District argues the program violates our constitutional requirement to maintain a, quote, general, uniform, and thorough system of public, free common schools, end quote. The $50 million program would provide up to $5,000 per child or $7,500 for special needs students for private school tuition, tutoring, and other educational expenses. State attorneys must now respond by November 10th after the court granted them a 1-month extension. The program remains scheduled to launch January 15th. Plus, we also have a full article breaking down how we got here and what comes next. You can check it out on localyokel.substack.com. And then finally getting to some good news that has arrived for those that have been praying for the Coeur d'Alene fire engineer Dave Tysdal. Tysdal will leave the hospital next week to begin outpatient care after he was shot during the horrific Canfield Mountain ambush on June 29th. For those that past is a little fuzzy because I know politics and news moves super fast, Tysdal suffered severe injuries when shooters targeted first responders who were called to what turned out to be a deliberate set fire. He endured chest and spinal trauma that collapsed his left lung, shattered ribs, and that damaged his clavicle. Despite being shot twice and trapped inside his brush rig, Tysdal continued to radio critical information to dispatchers, helping law enforcement during the manhunt. For his recovery, he will move to an apartment in Colorado with his wife Annie and their children, where he can continue to rehabilitate and focus on recovery. Construction crews back at home are already modifying the Tysdal's house to make it wheelchair accessible, preparing for when he can return. Though Tysdal has yet to regain function of his legs, his family remains hopeful for a miracle. His wounds, clavicle, lungs, and arm strength continue to improve each day. Idahoans that are concerned for him can send cards and well wishes to the Coeur d'Alene Fire Department Administrative Office at 300 East Foster Avenue. Did you enjoy that story or any of the ones that we've talked about so far in this episode? If so, do us a favor and hit the like, subscribe, /follow button so it helps us stay connected with you and reach more folks who love Idaho just like yourself. And then coming to parking, a less big issue, but also still contentious because we all have to deal with it. Caldwell City leaders approved new parking zones last Monday that limit how long you can park in downtown. This comes just weeks after the city paid $175,000 to end its parks metered contract that failed rather spectacularly earlier this year. The new system creates 2 zones with time limits that run Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m. A 3-hour zone sits between Blaine Street and railroad tracks from 5th Avenue to Kimberly Avenue. And then a 4-hour zone covers the areas between 5th Avenue and 10th Avenue, from Blaine Street to the railroad tracks. The city also purchased parking enforcement software for about $31,842. For those that aren't familiar with it and don't remember the meter mess, the city installed meters in May of 2024, expecting to generate $600,000 and $1,300,000 in annual revenue. Instead, the meters lost $32,000 and drove customers away from downtown businesses. The city suspended the program in August after business owners complained that the meters hurt their sales. Those who value being involved in their government and agree or disagree with this can contact the Caldwell City Council before these new restrictions take effect. Business owners also, to gather to this evidence if they agree or disagree with it, should document how these changes affect their customers after the past issues that the City Council has had with playing around with parking. And speaking of another Caldwell-related thing that got hooked up in Baltimore, Maryland medical examiners ruled last Friday that methamphetamine intoxication killed Nicholas Manning, the CEO of the West Valley Medical Center in Caldwell. But they classified how he died as undetermined, which means they can't say whether his death was natural, an accident, suicide, or a murder. And then giving a little bit of history, because I had to refresh myself for this story as well, because it's been a little bit. Baltimore police found Manning dead at a Baltimore Marymount waterfront hotel on June 6th. Officers, however, in the report said they found no signs of trauma on his body. Manning was 46 years old and had led West Valley since November of 2023. His family disputes the overdose theory. They released a statement claiming they have, quote, direct and credible evidence, end quote, that Manning was a victim of fraud and homicide. They strongly object to how the Baltimore police characterized his death. In conclusion, Maryland has a problem, if you didn't know, on how it classifies deaths. And this is something I didn't know until I was writing the script for this. Nearly 1 in 5 deaths examined there in 2023 fell into the undetermined category, with the Baltimore City recording the highest rate of 23.5% of deaths being categorized that way. Medical examiners say these numbers are unusually high and raise concerns about whether Maryland accurately counts homicides, suicides, and accidental overdoses. Manning's family now awaits for answers, while justice remains on hold, sadly. Did you know about that story about the CEO, or what was going on in Caldwell, or what was going on with a school choice tax credit? Or did you not even know that was a thing? If so, don't hesitate to share this episode with friends and family, so they can know what's going on in Idaho and be just as informed as yourself. And speaking of an ongoing story here in Idaho that seems to be very annual, we'll put it that way, our state is fighting quagga mussels in the Snake River for the 3rd year in a row. After treatments in 2023 and 2024, officials hoped they had killed off all these invasive pests. But they returned this September, as you may remember in our previous reporting. The Idaho Department of Agriculture is treating a 3.5-mile stretch between Shoshone and Twin Falls with a copper chemical called Nantrix. Now, as for good news, there is some in this story. The area where the mussels live has shrunk by 51% since last year. Look at that! From 7.2 miles down to 3.5 miles. These mussels, for those that haven't heard our previous reporting, multiply fast. One pair can produce over 1 million offspring in a year. And as for why that matters, they regularly grow in areas that could clog pipes that deliver water for drinking and irrigation, and could cost us hundreds of millions of dollars if they spread, especially to our power grid system with the dams. The treatment costs up to $3 million this year so far. It sadly also kills fish and other aquatic life too, but officials say populations upstream will help the river recover. The state hopes this aggressive approach means they won't need to treat the river again. And coming to our last story, and one that seems like a bad one, but is actually a good one and very interesting, and something that many Idahoans have been asking for. That is that fire crews across Idaho are intentionally setting fires this fall, and that's a good thing. The U.S. Forest Service is conducting prescribed burns on multiple national forests to reduce overgrown vegetation before next summer's wildfire season arrives. Crews are working during favorable weather conditions when they can actually control the flames, treating thousands of acres across the Idaho Panhandle down to Caribou-Targhee and Salmon Chalice National Forest. This proactive approach protects towns, infrastructure, and natural resources from the catastrophic wildfires that threaten us each year here in Idaho. Stacy Tyler, who manages the field programs for the Forest Service here in Idaho, didn't even know that was a position, that's cool, explained that crews use science-based models to pick the best windows for burns. When officials manage land with prescribed fire now, they set themselves up to avoid more severe impacts later on. We'll see a little bit more smoke this fall because of it, but the temporary inconvenience could mean significantly less smoke next summer. Officials will be posting signs and issuing alerts to keep Idahoans informed about the operations and any road closures. For the full story on how prescribed burns work, the history, and why they matter for Idaho, you can check out our more in-depth article on Local Yocal Idaho. Especially because the episode is finished, so if you want more Idaho stuff, you should head over there. Though I will say, thank you for listening to the entire report. I sincerely hope you found it enjoyable and valuable. If you like the midweek report, make sure to check out our other content on our website, as I just said. Also, if we missed any important points or provided incorrect information, please feel free to reach out to us via email or on Twitter by tweeting us at Local Yocal Idaho. With the small team we have, we're not able to cover everything, but we do our best to cover the most interesting and important stories. Thank you for your continued support and assistance. That's all for now, and I wish you a fantastic rest of your week. Godspeed.